The hall, please come to order. There is a quorum present. Welcome residents and taxpayers, town officials, town meeting members, and interested parties to the second session of 2024 Spring Annual Town Meeting and 2024 Special Town Meeting number 1. I had the warrants. Well, the clerk has them. Yeah, she has the copies here. Yeah, you get them back. I have the official warrant signed by the select board with the offices returned thereon, which have been duly posted and noticed that I delivered to the town clerk to be entered into the official record of the town of Natick. And that's for both town meetings. At this time, we'll swear in all new members who were recently elected or appointed. Would you please rise at where you're seated, please? We all set to go? Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear and affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties incumbent upon me as a town meeting member, according to the Natick Home Rule Charter and bylaws of the town, laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the Constitution of the United States. You are now sworn in. Welcome. Now that you've sat down, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, particularly with regard to those people that are serving around the world on our behalf. I pledge allegiance. Thank you. The meeting is assembled as follows. Diane Packer used to be sitting next to me, to my right. You are coming back. She's the interim town clerk. Seated to my left, immediate left, is Cody Jacobs, Finance Committee Secretary. Next to Cody is Todd Gillenwater, Finance Committee Chair. And seated next to Todd is Karis North, Town Council, down in the well. Furthest from me is Catherine Coughlin, Chair of the Select Board. And finally, next to Catherine is Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator. Please remember that the rules of the hall, these have been accepted for a long time and are the school's rules. Clear liquids, that is water, is permitted in the auditorium. However, no food or other drink is permitted. Would you also please shut off or mute your cell telephone and iPads so that we can all have clear going during the meeting? And you don't have to make certain that your devices are on anymore, but I hope that everybody has checked in, and I noticed some people had come up to the table to fix their devices that were having problems. With regards to seating in the hall, town meeting members, so long as we're doing electronic voting, may sit anywhere within the auditorium, allowing enough space to appropriately space themselves one from the other, except there are 3 members who are seated specifically in place, 2 of them being on the stage. The 2 members of the Finance Committee are also town meeting members. And down on the well, the Select Board Chair is also a town meeting member. No one else may sit in those spaces or be in those spaces during the meeting. Town meeting members it's requested that you also try and sit in the 2 forward sections, that is the forward section on the left and the center section. When and if we do a hand count, what I will look at first are those 2 sections and make a judgment call on the determination on a vote if we do a hand count. Now, I do know that there's 5 or 6 people who have asked me who are more comfortable seated elsewhere in the hall due to whatever, for whatever reason. They don't have to move. You don't have to move. You may sit where you are, and I'll make certain that I count your votes too. Down in the front of the hall, we do have 3 individuals that are going to be working the overhead system and as well as the voting systems. They're permitted to sit in that forward section also. The right-hand side is reserved for department heads. This is the right-hand forward section. Also, if residents or interested parties or speakers want to migrate to that location so that they may be seen if they want to speak or are planned to speak as a sponsor, please make way to that section, and I will see you better there. We do have a number of bylaws as well as some rules that we try to accept every meeting. Now I'm going to read this, and I'm going to read this since we're in both town meetings. These will apply to both the spring annual town meeting as well as the special town meeting. They are as follows. The proceeding of Natick town meeting shall be governed by town meeting time, the Natick bylaws, the town of Natick home rule charter, and the general laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. All residents and taxpayers of the town and all town officers and employees, whether or not residents, have the same right to speak as town meeting members. However, they do not have the right to submit motions for consideration at town meeting, nor vote on any matter before town meeting. No resident may only speak to the town meeting after approval. A non-resident, that is, may only speak to town meeting after approval above town meeting. Speakers seeking recognition by the moderator to speak shall rise at their seats. There are attendees who I know that might have issue with that. I'll look for your hand being raised over your head, and I will call on those individuals, you to speak at that time. The folks will bring around the microphone as you stand in your seat once I call on you. You must also make certain that you are ready to speak on items, and if I call you, I'm just going to count that as your first opportunity to speak if you do not speak. No person shall speak upon a debatable motion more than once when any other person desires to be heard, nor more than twice on the same debatable motion without permission of town meeting, and no person shall speak more than 5 minutes at one time without permission of town meeting. All motions offered for the consideration of town meeting shall be in writing if required by the moderator, and I require them here and now. And all motions involving the expenditure of money shall be in writing when required by any town meeting member. Written motions shall be presented to the moderator on prescribed forms. Those prescribed forms is included within your book. Consistent with the Natick bylaws, once a member is recognized, it has been the practice of town meeting members to first ask questions on the subject matter of the motion before you, then propose a motion if you so wish, and or debate the highest ranking motion, unless we combine multiple motions into one debate, which often happens. Once a speaker is called upon by the moderator, a speaker's time will begin. Time expended asking the questions will be considered part of the speaker's time. Responses to the speaker's question will not be considered part of the speaker's requisite time. Each speaker will be limited to 3 questions, whether they are stated singularly or in a compound question. Such will be responded to at the discretion of the moderator. Motions shall be made and have precedent as listed in the table entitled Precedent of Motions found in the Natick bylaws, Town Meeting Member Handbook, and Town Meeting Time. The motion for the previous question shall not be entered by the moderator if 3 or more persons are seeking recognition who have not previously spoken to the question. Any person having a monetary or equitable interest in any matter under discussion at town meeting, and any person employed or otherwise having such an interest shall disclose the fact of her or his interest or employment before speaking on the motion. Without objection, the preceding statements are accepted as the rules of 2024 Spring Annual Town Meeting and 2024 Special Town Meeting. No objection, we'll move on. Ms. Weithman, you are going to offer up a motion at this time?
Thank you. Christine Weithman, Precinct 5. I move to adjourn Special Town Meeting Number 1 until the first order of business on Tuesday, April 30th, 2024.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Griesmer. You may speak to that if you wish.
Thank you. This is the evening that our attorney is available to be with us to support all the charter motions. So we request town meeting support. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone understand what the motion is? That is to adjourn the special town meeting number 1 until the first order of business on Tuesday, April 30, 2024. Mr. Linehan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Linehan, Precinct 6. A question, looking at the booklet, all the Finance Committee recommendations, all but one, were unanimous for that, and there are 12 motions. And this will mean that if this gets out early, if the special town meeting gets out real quickly, which is a possibility, one hopes, is there a reason why we would not then, that we should not then reconvene in the regular annual town meeting? It's a question.
That would happen, and I would call up the special or the spring town meeting if the special were dissolved in an evening, yes.
Could we do that if this motion pushes it? I'm saying if tonight it gets wrapped up in an hour, that we would leave it an hour, because we could not, under this motion, reconvene the annual town meeting, could we?
I would, because it'll still be pending. It's only adjourned. The Springtown meeting would be adjourned during the time that the special is being acted upon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Trust me, we'll guide you through it. If you don't like it, we'll do it anyway. So the following motions are pertaining to the spring annual town meeting only. And I suggest the following motions. Move to waive reading the text of all 2024 spring annual town meeting warrant articles, and move to waive reading the text of motions, excluding amounts to be appropriated.
Oops. Mr. Moderator?
Yeah, who's calling out?
I am. I apologize. I don't think you took.
Oh, we didn't vote that.
You didn't vote that motion.
You. That's a good start. Thank you. All right, we'll vote the adjournment at this time. Just vote it. You can vote on the matter now, the adjournment. Is this screen not on?
No, is there a button? I'm very technology challenged, and old dogs don't.
Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is 102 yes, 3 no, 0 abstain. Passes by a majority vote. Yeah, do you want to scroll through it and we'll use this?
Oh, 1023.
102, 3, 0.
There's a black board.
You've got
Oh, is this the light?
yeah, that would be the light. Is the power strip on there?
Now I got the power on.
Where's the power button on this thing?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't actually found it. Sorry, it's like
Okay.
Power.
very, very hidden power button. It's like recessed into it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, there it goes. Yeah, it's getting there. Well, what did you just do?
I'm happy.
It's missing.
Is everybody happy?
No, Frank, it's not on.
Just let it power up. Do you not have signal coming up here? I don't have anything here. Have you gone through everything? Nobody's standing up with a problem? No? So it's a point of order. So why don't you go over to see Jeff and see if they could check. No signal. You sure you're hacked into there?
Remember it lifted up, I didn't know if they had disconnected anything.
No, I wouldn't worry about it. While we're waiting, I'll improvise here. There were a couple of handouts out at the desk. The first one was a survey that is being done by the town, and it is, let's see, Human Services Survey, and it's asking a number of critical questions or questions for information. The town of Natick is seeking input from residents age 18 or older. You can read the paragraph above the section, or at least section 1. And if you would please participate, which is voluntary, we would appreciate it. You can go to, if you want to respond online, you can also do it at the natick.gov website. If you have any questions, give Ms. Sullivan and or Mr. Marsha a call and they will help you out. Secondarily, there were two other handouts. One is a supplement, which is a revised motion for Article 8. You'll see it's duplexed. That will become critical, hopefully, if we can get going this evening. And second is a chart denoting some changes or at least some errors that were made in the quantum of votes in the Finance Committee recommendation book. And the critical thing, of course, is the town meeting quanta vote, which is on the right. You'll see that that will not jive with what is in the book, and we'll try and announce those as we go along, the changes in the quantum of vote. So I've got those done. I'm going to move on and just, I'm not going to waste our time here while there, but we'll do this as best we can. The next motion I want to, I read through that whole thing, right? Okay, I started to and we got interrupted. All right, I'm going to suggest this motion. Move to waive reading the text of all 2024 spring annual town meeting warrant articles and move to waive reading the text of motions, excluding amounts to be appropriated and sources of said amounts to be appropriated when appropriations are provided in the text of the recommendations of the Natick Finance Committee publications. Moved by Mr. Ostroff, seconded by Mr. Gath. Are you going to be able to take this vote? Okay.
We can take the vote, it's just that we can't see.
I understand. Okay, so you'll be able to take it, Jeff? Waive the reading. You haven't? We're going to vote on this. It's been moved and seconded. Oh, Jesus. Ostroff moved it, seconded by Bill Gath. Yes, sir. Let's go. This is really choppy. Please vote on the motion now. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is? It's time for coffee break. I close the vote. There we go. 107 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain. The matter prevails. I suggest another motion. Move that a consent agenda shall be in order during the second session of this spring annual town meeting, provided, however, that the moderator must ensure that said motion is published in the Finance Committee recommendation book, which is required to be provided at least 7 days prior to the opening of the second session of this spring annual town meeting. The moderator shall propose to town meeting members a consent agenda in the form of a motion listing all articles and respective motions, which, Based on the advice of the Finance Committee, interim town clerk, and town council, the moderator deems to be non-controversial. At said second session of the meeting, 7 town meeting members may be recognized by the moderator so that any article shall be removed from the consent agenda and debated and voted upon in accordance with the provisions of town meeting rules and practices. All articles remaining in the consent agenda shall then be voted upon by a single 2/3 vote without sponsor, presentation, or debate. Moved by Mr. Ostroff, second by Mr. Gath. Anyone want to debate the motion? Anyone want to, you're going to debate this motion? What is your amendment, and could you please present it in writing? I can't hear you, Mr. Hoagland. Could you get a microphone to Mr. Hoagland, please?
As we exchanged emails
Your name and
the
precinct,
other day-
please, so the people at home.
Henry Hoagland, Precinct 7. We exchanged emails the other day concerning the fact that I neglected to file by August 4 or April 4th my desire to offer a report in Article 2 on the status of the Samhain Committee. And you indicated that I should make that request at this time. At
No.
least that's what I understood.
I did not say you make a request. I said you should follow the process
Well, I
of the
guess I
consent agenda.
misunderstood.
Let me explain before you speak. The process that you're voting the process right now. When I actually call up the consent agenda motion, I will call out each article. When I call out Article 2, you and 6 other people should stand. I then will automatically take Article 2 out, and then you'll be able to place a motion under Article 2 to give your report.
All right.
And I said in my email, I believe I said, I will help guide you through this process.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
So if you wouldn't mind, I don't think an amendment is appropriate at this time, based on what you're saying. Thank you. Thank you, Henry.
Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Beaumont, for what purpose do you rise? Could you bring the microphone down front, please? Thank you.
Saul Beaumont, Precinct 10. So when you bring up these different motions and different articles, can we ask a question without having you pull the whole article out?
No.
So if you have a question, you pull it out then?
If 7 of you stand,
7, all right.
it then would extract whatever article that you want to ask a question about.
Okay.
Then we will bring that article up in the normal course of business. If you do not do that and you do not have the 7 people standing, we're just going to vote this in one fell swoop motion.
Thank
Okay?
you. Yeah.
I'll guide you through it, trust me. Yes, sir. You want to give the gentleman the microphone, please, sir? Thank you, young man.
Roger Scott, Precinct 10. Just a question regarding if you think there's a misprint in one of the things that was on the consent agenda, do you deal with that now, or do you have to pull it out to answer a question?
We're not even there yet. I haven't even called up that motion to the floor. When I call up the motion to the floor, that will be the appropriate time. I'll look for you to rise.
Thank you.
On the matter. I hope I remember. I did bring clear liquids with me, but I hid them in a red container. Okay. I think I saw Mr. Ostroff moved the motion, and Mr. Gass seconded the motion as I read it. We will vote the consent agenda motion. That's unusual. I haven't seen you do that yet. A consent agenda motion at this time. This is the rules. The consent agenda rule, right. Correct. Please vote on the rule now. Is this not going to work? Okay. Is the timer up? It is now time for lunch. The voting is closed. The tally of the vote, getting giddy here. It's early too. Yes, 107, no, 2, abstain, 0. The matter passes. I have 2 other procedural motions, and then we'll move on. Is there someone seeking the floor? So I can hear someone talking. If you're talking, if you could please leave the hall, I would appreciate it. I think the members would too. Mr. Carney, you had, yes, sir. There's a gentleman in the rear who's going to propose a motion.
I'm going to propose to move the consideration of Article 18 until first order of business May 7th. And Connor Carney, Precinct 9. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Connor Carney, Precinct 9.
Yeah, Connor Carney. Thank you. So the motion is moved to postpone consideration of Article 18 until the first order of business on May 7, 2024. That was seconded by whom? Oh, Ms. Foss. You want to explain why you're asking for this postponement, sir?
Yes, I'm a member of the Net Zero Committee, and there are some few people out of town until the 7th, so we wanted them to be here to talk about it and support the motion and also make the discussion more fruitful.
Very good. Further debate on the matter? Yes, sir. Down front here.
Simone Poliandri, Precinct 6. Just a question, I'm a terrible optimist. In case we end business, town meeting business before May 7th, will that article, we'll have to come back on May 7th for the article, or will that be called before? Again, optimism.
This motion is saying this comes first on the 7th.
No,
So
if we finish town meeting before May 7th,
yeah. Oh, okay.
We'll have to come back.
Misunderstood your question.
Okay.
It still will only come up on the 7th.
On the 7th.
Unless someone then has a motion to move it forward.
Okay.
To advance it.
Thank you.
Yep. Further debate on the matter? You ready for this one, Jeff? Thumbs up. Please vote on the matter now. I have it in writing. You what? I know. I'll take care of it. You're welcome. Voting is closed. There's a little lag time in the system here. Tally of the vote is 100 yes, 10 no, 0 abstain. The matter prevails. That article is postponed until May 7. I want to propose a motion, request to move to advance Article 13 to be considered after Article 3. Moved by Mr. Friedman, second by Mr. Gath. And this is to assist with the Personnel Board chairperson who has to travel and will be out country or just traveling, will be away in 3 consecutive nights following tonight. So it would behoove us to clear the Article 13 out of the way and move on as a courtesy to the chair of the board that is actually going to speak to this. And yay, we have our screen up. It's been moved and seconded. We'll vote this. It does require a 2/3 vote. Please vote on the advancement of Article 13. Just loaded like 70 votes all at once. Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is 110 yes, 2 no, 0 abstain. That matter will be, Article 13 will follow Article 3. Just so that you know, we just wanted to do those procedural motions so you can mark your books of when those are going to come up. What we were going to do to set the stage here, we'll do the consent agenda motion, and then, which is found on page 11 of your books. If that passes, we'll then proceed right to Article 3 through 5, 8, 10, 12, 13, 15, through 26, and 28. We'll get somewhere beyond the beginning of that. So to that end, I'll call up the consent agenda motion. And I'll start calling out the sub-motions, which is Article 1. Members rising to remove Article 1. Point of order. I didn't hear that. Mr. Linehan, for a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mike Linehan, Precinct 6. I apologize, but I think I'm confused. I believe a motion was made to adjourn the annual town meeting for the special town meeting, was it not, or was it backwards? Am I backwards?
You got it backwards.
Okay, so the special town meeting comes afterward. Okay.
Special town meeting has been adjourned till April 30, which is next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Okay. Just remember the process to remove any of these articles from the consent agenda. 7 of you need to rise. And I, seeing 7, will remove, upon your request, that's a request to remove it, the article for which you stand. So I'm going to call out the number of the article. It's printed right on page 11. Article 1, which is the authorization of the Board of Selectmen to acquire, obtain, abandon, and relocate easements, and is proposed by the town administrator. I see no one rising in that to remove that. Article 2 is a committee article, which is proposed by the town administrator. Henry? I see 7 people. Article 2 will be removed from that, from the consent agenda. Article 6. Article 6 is a question with regards to the revolving funds. I do not see 7 people standing. We will move on to the next article. Article 7 is a PEG access and cable-related fund. I see no one rising for that. It'll stay as it is. Article 9 is the transfer of unexpended bond proceeds proposed by the town administrator. No one rose for that purpose. Article 11 is a question for a school bus transfer subsidy. No one rose to remove that. Article 14 is amend the Natick bylaws, dates of spring annual town meeting, and submission of fiscal documents. That article will stay in the motion. Article 27, Speen Street and West Central Street, AKA Route 135 improvements. That will stay in the motion. Article 29, rezoning of 0R East Central Street and 0 Dorset Lane. Option 1. That stays in the motion. Rezoning, Article 30, rezoning of 0R East Central Street and 0 Dorset Lane, Option 2. That will stay in the motion. Article 31, amendments to zoning bylaw and zoning map, establish conservation, assisted living, and memory care, CALM overlay district, and include certain property therein. That will stay in the motion. The motion has changed, only that Article 2 has now been extracted. Does somebody move that as it is now constituted? Mr. Ostroff, seconded by Ms. Keeney. We'll now vote that. It does require a 2/3 vote. Please vote on that. We all said? Tally of the voters, 104 yes, 4 no, 1 abstain. Matter prevails by a 2/3 vote. You have just passed Article 1, or the motion under Article 1. We're at Article 2, the committee article. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation under Article 2?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends no action on the subject matter of Article 2 as printed in the Finance Committee book on page 17, and I so move.
Second.
Mr. Hoagland, for what purpose do you seek the floor? I did not accept the no action motion. You need a microphone, Henry.
I would appreciate the opportunity to provide the members with a short update of the progress on the Samhain project.
So the motion you're proposing is what?
It's to
All right.
take,
How about if I write it for you?
as you know, Mr. Moderator, I'm hearing challenged, so some of your requests I don't hear.
Do you want to hear and discuss, or do you want to just hear a report?
I'd be happy to present the report and answer any questions that people have.
Hear and discuss. A report by the Salwin House Study Committee, is that what the name is?
It's the Samhain House Committee, yes.
Jeff, this was one of those conditionals I mentioned to you earlier, Article 2. So the motion, seconded by Mr. Linehan. Mr. Hoagland, you want to speak to your motion? Will you take more than 5 minutes?
I think that the membership generally understands what the Samhain House is doing. I want to provide a report on it. It will take less than 10 minutes.
Without objection, we'll allow Mr. Hoagland to speak for 10 minutes. Yeah, you objecting? Mr. Ostroff, for a point of order, you need a microphone.
Josh Ostroff, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator,
Yeah.
I hope I phrased this point of order correctly.
Yeah, I think I got your point of order. We have to vote this first to hear it and discuss it.
It's more broad than that. So,
okay, keep going.
Our town bylaws, Article 40, require committees to file reports for the annual report. And a committee that fails to do so, that's established by town meeting, is considered discharged unless town meeting votes to continue that committee. That's a basic reading of the text of Article 40, Section 1, I think. The Salwin House Advisory Committee last met in 2019. So I am as interested in anyone in hearing what's going on with that project. But I want to see some fidelity to the bylaws. So I'm concerned about the precedent we are setting by hearing from a committee that this body established many years ago, and but we don't seem to have authorization to do that. So unless we also voted to continue that committee, and I welcome council advice and yours on this, I'm not sure that we can hear a report or that the committee exists. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Let me just think this through. Ms. North, is the point of order raised, or would that be considered a condition precedent that would invalidate this committee to speak under this article? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm,
Your advice, please.
yes, thank you. I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
While the bylaw does say any committee failing to report as required to the town meeting shall be discharged unless the town meeting shall vote to continue the committee notwithstanding, there has been, I still think that town meeting has to take an action to discharge. I don't think it's just discharged by operation of law. And there's been no motion or vote to discharge or to continue. So I think that town meeting can hear the report, but this is certainly a section of the bylaw that should be looked at and enforced going forward.
Well, let's give this a fair examination. I appointed the initial Sawin House Committee. Then, wasn't it reconstituted by the Select Board? No, Mr. Jennett, I need you to go to a microphone if you're going to respond. I'm trying to remember all this. This is, going into the cobwebs here. I originally appointed the first committee at the charge of town meeting. Then that committee lay dormant and did nothing. But then I thought the select board reconstituted that committee, and that committee then reported to the select board. Is my memory wrong? Incorrect? Do you folks remember it that way? You have to take a microphone. Do you have an answer to that? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Rick Jennett, Precinct 7. I just went to the website, Solomon House Advisory Committee. Indeed, it was Town of Natick 2015 Fall Annual Town Meeting, voted to establish a committee, purpose of advising the Natick Board of Selectmen on preserving the town's cultural and historic architectural heritage, yada, yada, yada. And then it just gives you the composition of the committee, and then it just drops off. There's nothing beyond that.
But it gave a report. I remember it gave a report and then laid dormant.
I can't answer that at this
Okay?
point. Yeah.
But then I thought the select board, and I think Mr. Evans may be rising to help us all understand the history here. Is that what you're rising for, Mr. Evans? Thank you, Bruce. Because I thought the select board did something with this committee. I thought I heard them do that. Bruce?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bruce Evans is a member of the Select Board. Prior to my joining the Select Board, the Sawin Committee, as opposed to the Sawin House Committee, was formed. And then along came COVID, and a lot of the activity ceased in that committee. So probably in the last year, efforts to move forward with the Sawin House were initiated by the chair of the Sawin Committee, and the town administrator and I met with Mass Audubon and the rest of the Sawin Committee to move it forward. So that is the purpose, I believe, of Mr. Hoagland's intent to have a report here.
So let me understand this. It is a committee reporting to the select board, not a standalone committee as town meeting had established back in 2015. Is that correct?
No, Mr. Moderator, it is an extension of the committee that was set by the moderator. We did not appoint members as a
Well, did
select
you
board.
consult the moderator in extending that committee?
I don't hear what he said.
Did the select board consult the moderator in its or a town meeting to extend that committee?
Before my time, and I can't answer that question.
Right.
Mr. Moderator, if
Who's
I...
speaking? Oh. I'm trying to get all the facts out here.
And I have...
Because I can't determine the point of order till I understand the facts. Ms. North.
And I have a couple of facts that may or may
Good.
not be helpful. When I started in 2019, when I took over for Attorney Flynn, I believe, and I don't have the document in front of me, so I can't say for sure, that the Select Board rejuvenated a Sawin House committee at that time because I provided legal advice to the Select Board, the Town Administrator, and the committee with respect to negotiations between Sawin House and the Audubon Group. So it's my recollection, without documentation, that it was a Select Board committee established about 5 years ago, and it was not necessarily a continuation of the town meeting committee.
Okay. The chair of the Select Board? Is this committee, a constituted committee, still established? And is it an advisory committee of the Select Board? And then the second question is, have they reported to you? As your board, I should say, as a advisory committee.
Catherine Coughlin, Chair of the Select Board. Mr. Moderator, there have been discussions with a member of that committee and members of town administration and the Select Board with regard to making progress on the Sawin House issue. The committee has not provided a report, and I do not believe they've met.
Okay, so they reported to the Select Board, so the minutes will reflect that it's still active.
There has been no report to the Select Board from the committee.
You know, given that, Ms. North, I have a tendency to, this committee is dormant and hasn't acted inconsistent with the bylaws. So the committee doesn't exist.
Correct. I think that based on what we've heard this evening, and I was just about to check with one other former Select Board member, there is no town meeting Sawin House committee, but there is a Select Board Sawin House committee, so there is nothing to report to town meeting.
Right.
No responsibility to report to town meeting.
I think given the facts as I've heard them this evening, I think I have to say that the motion that I've accepted the maker and the second should be withdrawn, as there is no committee to give a report, and so therefore there cannot be a report under this article. And would you concur, Ms. North, with that ruling?
I do concur with that ruling, Mr.
Very
Moderator.
good. Then that's final. For what purpose do you stand, Mr. Connolly? Down front with the microphone, please.
Paul Connolly, Precinct 6. Mr. Moderator, when we pulled out Article 2 from the consent agenda, I presume we put it in its wording that we actually have in Article 2, which is as broad as anything you can have. So with having that article now before us, it almost opens up any type of report from anybody who wants to see if they can do it. So I don't know. We basically opened the door to a lot of things, and I hope we could get through and get moving.
The scope of the article is town officers, boards, and committees. That does not open up anyone who wishes to speak at town meeting on anything that they want to. We have determined that the committee does not exist. So therefore, it has basically liquidated itself by its inactivity. Overruled. I will accept the motion for no action, which was made by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. I'll put that to the floor. Do we need to debate that? I didn't think so. We'll vote the motion for no action under Article 2. You may vote on that motion now. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 99 yes, 6 no, 3 abstain. Passes by a majority vote. Next order of business is Article 3. Article 3 is a question with regards to the omnibus budget. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have recommendation under Article 3?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 3, Motion A, as printed beginning on page 19 in the FinCom recommendation book, in the total amount of $190,918,713, with $143,030,237 sourced from tax levy for fiscal year 2025, $17,017,811 sourced from state aid, $18,391,833 sourced from local receipts, $4,737,709 sourced from free cash, $1 million sourced from overlay surplus, $84,345 sourced from golf course indirects, $3,709,222 sourced from water sewer indirects, $2,775,607 sourced from ARPA, and $171,949 sourced from other available funds. And I so move.
Second. Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, second by Mr. Gillenwater. Motion A, as it appears on pages 19 through 24 of the Finance Committee recommendation book. Before we go into presentations, this motion is different from what you have seen under the omnibus budget in past years. This is a consolidated motion which is now taking nearly all of your operating budgets, with the exception of the 2 enterprise funds, and voting it in one motion. So you're approving it as detailed on these pages only, in total as read, as it is printed here. So when we get beyond the sponsor's presentation, the whole motion is on the floor. So questions and debate will be open to the floor on the entire motion. Okay? There are 4 speakers. I would hope that the speakers look at the hour of the evening and take that into account. The first speaker will be Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator on the state of the town.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you. Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator. And I will be brief with my comments because of the hour and the 5-minute limit. Just for the record, Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator, and welcome to the 2025 Spring Annual Town Meeting. We finally got to the point where we're actually voting. Yay, go us. Thank you, thank you. We're really excited to be here. I first want to just thank all the individuals that supported the creation of the FY25 budget. It was a Herculean task led by John Townsend, Tien from the finance team, as well as all the department heads that you see sitting on the left-hand side of the, my left, your right of the auditorium. Bella Wong, interim superintendent of schools, was a great partner throughout this process. I see John Evans from Keefe Tech. He'll be speaking shortly. As well as members of the Finance Committee who spent countless hours reviewing this budget with us. Todd Gillenwater, new chair, this is his first time doing it. I give him full credit for all the hard work he put in this year, as well as the rest of the Finance Committee. They did a phenomenal job, in my opinion, and they provided a unanimous support, which I always like to see. And last but not least, Gloria Huang, who did really the architect behind the book and the budget. She is an amazing resource for the town. I want to give her full credit for all the work that she has done for creating this budget and this budget book. I also want to briefly just recognize a few new members to the team tonight. We have a new member to our leadership team in the Community Services Department, Kathy Gross, as our interim Human Services Director for Community, you have a very long title, so ask her what her title is, get to know her. She's really great. She's an awesome resource in the Community Services Division. We also have our new Director of Facilities and Maintenance, Jennifer Mullen, who's here this evening. She's sort of our newest department division head on the leadership team. Really just started actually this week, I believe. Monday, correct? Last week, sorry. So she's been here a week. Let's make sure she stays longer than that time by getting through town meeting in an expeditious fashion. But while we go back to the budget, I just want to really briefly highlight a few things just to note this year. FY25 was definitely a stable year, but also a tight year. It's really, in my opinion, sort of the final year whereby we're transitioning out of the pandemic era and into a new normal. So on the revenue side, you'll notice that our local receipts have almost rebounded completely to pre-pandemic levels. I think FY26 is where we're going to see it finally turn that corner, but FY25 is where we're getting really close. New growth remains extremely strong. However, state aid is coming in below expectations or below historic norms, so that's really important for us to acknowledge. And it's also the final year of our stimulus funding, or ARPA funding. ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, that was the federal stimulus dollars that came in, and it allows to offset some of the revenue loss that we had during our local receipts during the pandemic years. This is our final year of using those one-time funds to help offset our budget. On the expense side, we still see the drivers being healthcare costs, the inflation and interest rate increases, as well as just the continued investment that we need to make in our biggest resource and our most valuable resource, our employees. Those are some of our biggest drivers on the expense side. With all that said, Natick is still financially strong. FY25 proves that. It shows that we are still a AAA bond-rated community, and we are still very much a sought-after community within the region and really within the nation, in my opinion. And I give full credit to the team of department heads here tonight for all their creativity in creating the FY25 budget. We've reused resources, we've reappropriated resources that we had. You'll see some comments to that in the presentation from John Townsend on the town side on some of our new initiatives. They're really repurposement of existing resources for new initiatives to meet the demands of the community. And before passing on the mic, though, I would like to just also note and highlight that the approach taken this year to the omnibus budget, which was noted by the moderator, or sorry, prior speaker, and it's in the budget book, it's a motion, not motions, motion. No S, although there are two motions technically, because we have a motion for the budget and then a motion for the enterprise funds, but a motion nonetheless. And this was really in reaction to what we heard from town meeting in the 2019-2020 timeframe. The Town Meeting Practices and Rules Committee recommended that we try to continue to consolidate their motions into as few motions as possible to make your job as town meeting members more efficient, more expeditious, more transparent, and just more fluid for us to get through. So We've done that. It's taken us a handful of years, but thanks to John's team and the work that we did with the finance team and the finance committee, we're now down to a few motions. You'll also see that approach in the capital motions as well later on in town meeting. So in my opinion, these adjustments are all positive. FY25 is a very strong year, and I look forward to having robust discussion this evening and throughout town meeting. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Very good. Our next speaker is Natick Public Schools Superintendent. And you have a presentation which you've submitted. Do you have that, Gail? Oh, Gloria?
Okay, thank you.
Superintendent, you have the floor.
Thank you. Moderator Foss and all who are present, and thank you to Town Administrator Erickson for his comments. I am astonished by how much I've come to learn about Natick these last months. It is because each and every person I have ever met whose purpose is to serve the town of Natick, whether as an employee or a volunteer, has only been incredibly eager and proud to share what they know about Natick in order to be helpful. It is abundantly clear how much this community cares about the welfare of all its citizens, and especially of its students. It has been an honor to work for the town of Natick this year, and it is now my privilege to present to you the proposed FY25 school budget for your consideration. I believe every budget comes with a story particular to its place and time. This year's story is informed by many of whom I have mentioned, and this presentation would not have been possible without their generous assistance. So, key factors to consider for this budget. The overall student enrollment will remain steady for the next 2 years, except for the high school, which will continue to sustain increases over the next 6 to 7 years. So each of the next 6 or 7 years is going to be more than what you have today. The pandemic, it is clear, negatively impacted students' academic, social, and emotional growth. There was a significant increase in numbers of students requiring mandated services post-pandemic. Increases are expected to continue due to the documented trends. Commitment to the NPS profile of a graduate for all students remains imperative, and that is clear across the district. One-time COVID-related funding has been spread out over several years to address immediate and critical student needs, and the reserve of pandemic one-time funding will be exhausted after FY25, consistent with the town administrator's comments. The FY25 budget absorbs previously remaining grant-funded positions and newly created positions to address increasing student needs not previously funded in the FY24 budget. The major cost drivers is staffing, 9.2% for staffing, and new transportation bid at 9.9%. There are modest staffing improvements related to student services at the elementary, middle, and high school. FY25 financial assumptions. There are no new initiatives for the FY25 budget. It is and will be a strong year of programs, but no new initiatives for FY25. All former initiatives are sustained. Federal and state grants are level funded. We have implemented current contract agreements. At the time of creating this budget, there was a lower rate of reimbursement assumed for circuit breaker. Expenses related to mandated services are incorporated. There is a total offset of $5.4 million against circuit breaker reserve and a 9.9% increase in transportation costs. There are no changes to student fees for athletics, parking, or busing in this budget, but it is something that the school administration and school committee knows that can be looked at for FY26. It assumed the reestablishment of the bus subsidy, and I thank you for approving that in the consent agenda. It incorporates previously grant-funded and newly created positions intentionally covered by circuit breaker in FY24. We did have to commit to reductions in staffing, and there are some savings related to the closing of the Johnson Elementary School, and that total amount was $793,639. And there are modest increases in staffing, elementary, middle, and high school, related to student services. This is a overall chart of the enrollment, and again, the high school enrollment, currently at 1619, will be more than that for each of the next six, next 6 or 7 years. This chart shows the special education enrollment and how I said that there were dramatic increases in the need for student services. This chart shows a significant increase between last year and this year. Through December 2023, there are more than 100 students requiring individualized educational programs for special education. This chart summarizes overall increases in student services, again for IEPs, 504s. This is through December, so it's already exceeding the prior year and will be higher by the end of this year. For ELL services, an increase of 23% by the mid-year, and McKinney-Vento, 44% increase at the mid-year. So this is the documented dramatic increase in mandated student services. As I mentioned, over the last 3 fiscal years, including this one, 22, 23, and 24, there's been an increase in new staffing to address the immediate and critical needs of students, but also to focus on elementary and mental health. So this summarizes the changes over the last 3 years. We are able to carry forward most of that new staffing, but there were staffing reductions that we committed for this year. Over a dozen positions have been eliminated for the next school year, and I really appreciate the thoughtful input of colleagues who participated in that challenging decision-making process and who also helped convey the difficult outcomes to our staff. This is the outline of the FY25 budget. Again, we have a 9.2% increase in the salary line. And this reflects the increase over the 4.22% that will be allocated to us from the town and includes the 0.52% that will be allocated to us through the bus subsidy. This outlines a step-by-step as we develop the budget. The first number is the appropriation we received for this year. The second line would have been at a level service budget that would have maintained all the staffing that we had this year into next year. So we are hoping for an approval of the appropriation of 4.22%, which is highlighted in blue. It does include 1.6 million of ARPA funds. And then the bus subsidy, which you have already approved, that still left us with a shortfall of over $2,643,959. We are addressing that shortfall by an additional offset against circuit breaker of $2 million. And we've added some of those modest improvements related to student services, which left us with a remaining gap, which we resolved through staffing reductions and savings due to the closure of Johnson. This chart helps you understand what is evolved with one-time funding. If you look at the chart and you start from one column and move to the right, you see that there's dashes instead of new sums. And so you will see in FY22, that was the last of the COVID grants that was received. And so with thoughtful planning with the district and with the town, those funds were reserved in, they were placed in reserve, and we were able to use it over the next fiscal years. And again, the last of it will be exhausted after FY25. This is to help you understand our revenue through circuit breaker. Circuit breaker are funds that we reserve for partial reimbursement of tuitions for students that we send out of district. And so you can see it's been fairly stable in this year and last year, and we're projecting a stable amount for the next year. And this is to help you understand how the circuit breaker reserve has been used with one-time funding to help allocate over several fiscal years. We are receiving $3,695,042 in circuit breaker funds this year. We're actually using more than that to support the budget for FY24. We are projecting a carry forward to FY25 of $2.7 million, and so this is how the reserves have been moved from one year to the next. We're projecting a receipt in FY25 of that amount, and then we are projecting an offset for FY25 of $5,381,994, which means in the end, we're projecting a remaining amount to carry forward of under $1 million to FY26. But this is to help illustrate how we've been able to spread those one-time funding over several years. And again, this is the FY25 budget with the appropriation of 4.22% from the town, and with the addition of the bus subsidy that you have approved. And together, this is the request for your approval tonight. Thank you.
Next up is Superintendent Evans from Keefe Tech. Welcome.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, it's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm John Evans from Keefe Tech, and I'd like to begin with a couple of acknowledgments for you. First is a reminder that the town of Natick is well represented by two of our school committee members, and they are Ed Carr and Henry Hogland. While they are relatively new to the Keefe Tech School Committee, they are no stranger to service in the town of Natick, and they've also made wonderful additions to our team. I would also like to acknowledge the continued partnership with Natick Public Schools and the support of families who are considering our form of education for a public high school experience. We greatly appreciate the work from the middle schools when we take in about 1,800 students from our 5-member communities for 2.5 hours each to take a good look at our school and make a well-informed choice. We realize that's a lot of logistical work, and we greatly appreciate the support of the middle schools who help us to make that happen. A few highlights to share with you about Keefe Tech. We're proud to say that 60% of last year's graduating class had plans to go on to college, and we are up to 8 advanced placement courses with a couple of new courses in pre-calculus and computer science principles. I think it's important to remind our communities that while we specialize in career and technical education, the students who choose us are not closing any doors for post-secondary education when they come to our school. In terms of our career and technical programming, our 2 newest programs of HVACR and dental assisting are at capacity and actually have a waiting list. These 2 programs were funded by approximately $500,000 each of state skills capital grant money, and we're thrilled that this was a decision we made and the students seem to be following into it. It's going extremely well. Also happy to report that our evening school program, Keefe at Night, has received over $500,000 in Career and Technical Initiative, or CTI, grant money, which allows us to provide 200-hour training programs in plumbing, in HVAC, and soon electrical. And these programs would be free of charge to the community members who join us who meet the criteria and qualifications. So we're pleased to be able to provide services to our community beyond the high school experience as well. In terms of our overall enrollment, we have become a very popular choice for students considering high school options. We continue to be at capacity and actually have over 500 applications for the 225 spots that we have. So Keefe Tech is enjoying a lot of attention, recognition, and we believe we're a good high school option for the communities that we serve, each of which have wonderful high schools like Natick does. In terms of our overall district enrollment, this year being at capacity means we have 868 students from our 5-member municipalities. That's an increase of 31 students, or 3.7%. For Natick, we are thrilled to report that we actually have an increase in students. We are up 15 students to a total of 61 students as of this October 1st. That increase of 15 students represents an increase of 32.6%. It's important to remind people when you're starting with a relatively small number of 15 new students creates a pretty big percentage increase, but we're thrilled that they came to us. And I did provide you with a historical perspective of our numbers, and this actually turns a corner on a relative period of decline starting in FY19 where we had 72 students. So to go from 46 to 61, we're mindful of the increase and the costs associated with it, but I think it is great to witness that Natick is utilizing this educational resource that's available to the community. In terms of our overall operating budget, our committee approved an operating budget for FY25 of $25,031,006. That is an increase of $871,987, or 3.61% over FY24. As was mentioned with previous speakers, state aid was a little bit disappointing this year in terms of our expectation. We know that's true for us. We know that's especially true to the 5 communities that support us as well. So in an effort to respond, we tried to be as aggressive as possible in finding efficiencies from our preliminary budget to our final budget, and in looking at offsets for the member assessments for our communities. And the result for the town of Natick this year for FY25, we have an assessment request of $1,407,225. That's an increase of $343,732, or 32.32% over FY24. And just as a reminder, that enrollment increase was 32.6%. So we hope that you can see that it's nearly linear in terms of the assessment increase and the enrollment increase for the community. I also wanted to just spend a moment talking about our capital stabilization fund. This is something that was unanimously approved by our 5 communities last year in the spring and was established with a zero balance for the year. Next year, as promised, we plan to fund that account with $200,000. That amount is built into the assessment for our member communities, and we wanted to be fully transparent and show that with Natick's representing a little bit over 7% of our overall student population, the impact for Natick for that $200,000 capital stabilization fund would be $14,060 that is included in this assessment request. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I greatly appreciate the ongoing support for Keefe Tech, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if they come up at a later time. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Townsend.
Good evening, members of town meeting, Mr. Moderator, John Townsend, Deputy Town Administrator, and your Director of Finance. Here to present the Article 3 Omnibus Budget, the budget for 2025. In order to understand that it is getting a little late, I'm going to be trying to short with words. I'm going to describe this budget as tight. So before we start spending any money, I think we should take a look at the revenues and what we're going to be looking at with regards to how much money we're going to have to spend. So the overall revenues estimate for FY 2025, $195,450,879. Starting at the left-hand side of the slide, you got the tax levy, $144,980,081, up 2.9% from last year. Of course, Proposition 2.5 doesn't cap it at 2.5. We do have the extra 0.4% of new growth. We did budget new growth at $1.1 million, as probably most of you know, and our session, Mr. Henderson will confirm the fact that we did actually get $2.1 million 2.1 million for FY24. Now, DOR sort of frowns on us from overestimating anything, so therefore you get the very conservative estimate of 1.1. However, I feel fairly confident that we will be back in the fall, a little higher number there to discuss with you with regards to funding for the rest of FY25. A couple of good notes. We do have some declining debt exclusions, Senior Center Construction and Wilson Middle School. Some projects a lot of you are familiar with are coming to an end in FY25 to provide us with some relief there. Once again, I'm echo previous speakers regarding state aid. It's a little bit of a disappointment here. 1.4% increase at $18,588,430. This, of course, is based on the governor's budget, and that's how we budget. We understand that the House has increased that a little bit, which, is, of course, is always welcome and is very nice, but we do keep with our estimate of the governor's budget. Hopefully, by the time we end up towards the end of the year with the conference committees, we'll get a little bit better news, but at this time, yes, it is a little bit of a disappointment at 1.4% when our historical averages have been around about 3.2%. Moving on to a little better news, local receipts, up 13.2% at $18,430,536. This does represent some recovery from COVID. Over the past 2 years, this number has actually gone up by about 30%, but we are beginning to see an end to that. A big chunk of the actual 13.2% increase comes from our increase in our fees from the CED, as well as the fire department, their ambulance fees, raise those fees after long periods of time, and it's helping out with our local receipts. So as we move through 25 into 26, we're going to be seeing a little bit more realistic number from our local receipts. Historically has been around 3.5 to 4%. And then all the rest of the other revenues, those of course would be our ARPA funds and of course free cash, everybody's favorite. I'd like to remind everybody, so ARPA funding revenue replacement will be ending in FY25. This will be the last year we get that. It was $2.7 million. In 26, that will be ending. We do, of course, try to use our free cash prudently. Unfortunately, it's a little bit higher than I'd wanted it to be for FY25 at $4.7 million. However, we did have some sort of unexpected surprise expenditures estimates towards the end of the year. I'm going to talk about towards the end of our budget process, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, that we had to use additional free cash on. Capital investments, we are using our free cash as $500,000 towards capital projects, and then having some contributions to our capital stabilization fund as well as our OPEB fund in the amount of $250,000 apiece. Good news, of course, we're not using any utilization of any operational or general stabilization funds in FY25. The move? Yeah, it did. Okay. So going to move on to expenses. Total operating budget estimate for FY25, $190,918,713, or about a 4.2% increase over FY24. The first stop, of course, is our educational budget, $9,139,019. The education, this particular thing also includes libraries. So it's going to be the schools. I don't really go over their numbers due to the excellent presentation from the superintendent, but that includes our libraries as well. Moving on to the next area of shared expenses, $56,903,720, up 4.7%. The sort of highlights, or maybe I would say the lowlights, with regards to our shared expenses, which are those expenses that are shared by both town and school. First of all, the pension, we got a little bit of surprise in February, and we got a amended letter from PERIC, which is the state oversight agency with regards to our pension liabilities. They actually put that up significantly. So that was an increase of 5.4%. But the biggest surprise for us came with healthcare. As you all know, we have been having difficulties with healthcare because it just seems to keep on going up and up and up. We had anticipated actually a 9.5% increase. It actually came in at 8.66%, which would have been good news. However, as you will probably recall, going through the COVID times, the pandemic, we talked a lot about our inability to have all of our positions filled. We had a lot of vacancies. Now, the good news is that that has turned around, and actually we've filled a lot of those vacancies. Unfortunately, from a healthcare cost perspective, that means we have a lot more policies, plans that we did have to pay for, and that came as a little bit of a jolt with regards to our estimates on our healthcare costs, and therefore, I guess, okay, the total budget increase just for the healthcare is, of course, only part of the shared expenses, was an increase of 17.58% overall, $2,847,188, or an 8.6% rate increase, as well as additional plans. Overall, for the 2-year time frame, 9.5% overall increase in our health care. And then finally, town expenses. The town's estimated budget will be $42,875,974, or an increase over 24 of 2.8%. Inflation still is a problem and is a concern for us in putting together this budget. Personnel, a lot of the costs involved with that 2.8% increase do involve personnel. We're going to talk a little bit more when we get to Article 8 with regards to some collective bargaining agreement increases, but a lot of it has to do with cost increases on the personnel side. Oops, just a second. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Thank you, dear Gloria. So we can talk about some new initiatives. Mr. Erickson, the town administrator, did mention we have some new initiatives in this particular budget. The total budget amount for our new initiatives is $465,725. Now, that's the actual cost of them. However, the aggregate addition to the general fund is $340,225. However, when you take into consideration that a lot of the new initiatives are, moving funds for the new initiatives, or the opioid settlement monies which we received, which is part of the state litigation against the opioid providers and distributors, the aggregate of the total increase on the general fund is $271,000. Just a couple mentions here with regards to new initiatives. We are proposing a new assistant fire chief, which has been something that's on our agenda for a while now, providing more management and better coverage with regards to the fire department. The Board of Health has a couple of excellent new initiatives. One of them is actually repurposing a vacant sanitarian position into a part-time mental health social worker to provide additional coverage for the town in that particular area, as well as the implementation of the $118,000 in the opioid settlement towards covering substance abuse programming for residents that will take the place of some grant funding that had been ending, so we were able to continue those much needed services for our residents. And then finally, there's one other example, DPW setting up a co-op students with Keefe Tech. So hopefully some of those additional students that are going to Keefe Tech from Natick are actually going to be coming doing a co-op with DPW. A couple of excellent sort of synergies there. Hopefully we'll give cover some work for DPW, but in addition, sort of expands our pool to make certain that we have a place to recruit from in the future. So finally, revenues, $195,450,879. Operating expenses, $918,713. The below line items, those items such as capital improvements, school bus subsidies, snow removals, overlays, $4,525,463. We do have a surplus of $11,703. Now you can see why I term this as a tight budget. we'll try our best not to spend all of that money left over. So that was motion A, covering the sort of the departmental budgets. Now we move into motion B, which is our enterprise funds. Just very quickly, water and sewer total expenses are projected to go up by 2.3%. Total revenues at $21,406,934. The expense drivers here are the sewer assessment cost, which has been going up. That's the amount of money we pay to the MWRA for our sewer services. Always a concern. Capital costs, and then of course the additional PFAS filters, which I think we mentioned at previous town meetings. Yes, we still need to buy those. They still are expensive, and they do need to go into our operating budget. The golf course total expenses of $1,046,887, up 5.3%. The expense drivers there, the land lease has an escalator clause, actually goes under the CPI, which was a little bit of a surprise there. It went up this year a little bit more than we thought it would, but the inflation, personnel costs also are adjustments, but they're doing actually very well. Projected revenues projected at $1,459,000. So the golf course will remain in the positive position by producing sufficient revenues to cover its operating costs and does not need any subsidies from town meeting. So that, Mr. Moderator, will conclude my comments on the Article 3, the FY25 omnibus budget. We are, through yourself, available, along with all the department heads here, to answer any questions that town meeting may have with regards to this budget.
Thank you all. You now have the motion before you, as it is printed on page 19 through 24 of the Finance Committee recommendation book. Debate on the matter. Yes, gentleman in the white shirt. Down front here, please.
Roger Scott, Precinct 10. Is this a time we can ask questions like, what are we currently paying for the money we borrow to keep the town going on these new things that we spend money on? Do we have a number?
Is that a question?
Yes.
To the member's question?
Can I have their question repeated? I didn't quite hear it.
So we borrow from people willing to lend us money. What is the rate we're borrowing at currently?
So currently we are still a AAA rated community. We actually haven't gone out to borrow recently. Our last, so in order to preserve our cash, we basically redirected our focus. We're basically doing bond anticipatory notes, which are shorter term amounts, shorter term notes that are actually at a lower rate than the regular bonding procedures, and also they're cheaper to do so. I think the last rate that we got on our bond was 3.2%. Yeah.
Interesting. Regarding the school, do we have a number of how many students are in the Natick public school system?
How many what?
Students.
Students.
In the Natick.
To the member's question.
Public school system.
Our current enrollment is 5,200 as of October 1.
And do you have a number that would equate to how much that is cost per student?
I do not have the per pupil expenditure in mind, sorry.
Would you be able to get that?
To continue in debate.
I'd like to be able to get that number somehow and just find out if we're going up and down per student costs year over year. I noticed it's like in the past 2 years we've gone up $10 million on the school budget.
Sure. Can you get that in and send that via email to Mr. Scott?
You can get that and send it to him after the meeting, right?
I can get the per pupil expenditure, and usually that's calculated in delay, like we would have it from the state from last year. I can get you that.
Thank you. And is the state money that we're going to receive, is that already in hand or is that promised?
I'm not going to allow the question. You've asked 3 questions.
Okay.
You may debate the matter at this time, and wait for everybody else to speak, and then you'll have a second chance there.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott. Further debate, Mr. Linehan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will follow up because that was my question. Slightly different form. On the state aid, with everything that we're hearing about with the state budget, how solid, Mr. Townsend, you said actually $18,588,430 is the total amount we're expecting to get from state aid. How confident are you that that will not be reduced?
To the member's question.
That's a good question. I have a fair degree of confidence that that will not be reduced. I have also a little bit of hope that will go up. I mean, the House did approve an increase. I think it was $300,000, yeah. So that was a favorable sign, but we will have to wait to see what comes out of conference committee. But I am hopeful we'll get a little bit more.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, this is a question to you, I believe, as everything is. The motion, it's kind of a technical question. The motion was made, as it should have been, by reading the numbers on page 25 of the FinCom booklet. The funding source numbers presented by Mr. Townsend did include funding for items that he referred to as below the line items. Is the fact that we're voting on, for example, amount to be raised $190,918,713, a problem when the presentation showed $195,458,79?
No, because all you're appropriating is what's printed in the book.
Okay, thank you.
Further debate on the motion before you. Mr. Devereaux? Page? Right behind you.
Rick Devereaux, Precinct 8. Just a question of understanding that the town seems to have a policy of hybrids first in terms of vehicle acquisition, and I was wondering whether either the 2 police cruisers being purchased this year were hybrids.
This article does not contain purchase of capital items. That I think is Article...
Pardon me. Withdraw the question.
12? Is that right? Okay. Yeah, it'll be under Article 12 that you could ask that question. It's an excellent question. Yes, sir. Down front.
Shantanu Namdar, Precinct 3. One question I have is around the healthcare costs. We were looking for some final numbers to come from the West Suburban that we contract with, and we were expecting it to be somewhere in the 9.5% range. Where did we land in the end? Do we know?
To the member's question.
Thank you. So because we actually formulate our budget before we actually get the final numbers from West Suburban, that was our initial estimate. But then West Suburban came out with their final numbers in the end of February, around then, at the 8.33 mark. Yeah.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Moderator, second one. What is required for us? One of these risks that we mentioned in the booklets around finance was we have had a structural deficit challenge, let's say, for a decade now. And so are there any permanent solutions that are available for such a thing, or do we just have to muddle along with that challenge?
To the member's question?
An excellent question. I could probably go on for quite a while about the structural deficit, but the one thing I will say, and this is my comments regarding free cash, and that's one of the sort of key sort of elements that you're having a structural deficit problem when you're using free cash, which is you don't know how much free cash you're ever going to have in a particular year, one-time monies to operate things which are going to be going year after year after year, and that's something which the Department of Revenue, our sort of oversight agency from the state, frowns upon. So one of the indications that we do have a structural deficit, and one of the reasons why I brought it up when we're talking about free cash, is that we did use probably more than we probably should have at 4.7 to deal with operational issues that did come up. We would preferably have had some either tax levy or some other sort of alternative forms to deal with those particular issues, such as the healthcare expenses increases, instead of using free cash. Now, there are a number of different ways that we can deal with that, which that's probably a conversation for a later time, and we'll get to that later. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Further debate on the matter? Mr. Grady?
Alan Grady, Precinct 3. I ask to move the question.
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
Point of order right in the middle of motion. Would you belay your motion until I could hear a point of order? For a point of order, Ms. Coughlin, into the microphone, please.
I wanted to alert Mr. Moderator that Dr. Wong has an answer to Mr. Waters' question.
It's an inappropriate time for that matter, but we'll come back to it. Mr. Grady's motion is to move the question. It was seconded by, was that you, Ms. Foss, when I saw your hand? Mrs. Foss? Second by Mrs. Foss. There were people seeking the floor. We had 1, 2. There were only 2 people seeking the floor. I can take the motion to close debate at this time. We will vote that. This is a 2/3 vote to close debate on motion A. Please vote on closing the debate under motion A at this time. The motion to close debate prevails, 84 yes, 27 no, 0 abstain. We will now vote motion A. Motion A does require a majority vote. You ready? Please vote. I didn't see the green glow. Please vote on motion A now. I don't think so. Time up. Oh, it's still swollen.
Yes, it's yours.
Wow. Dinner time. The next ones we're going out for drinks. That's it. Going for cocktails. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 104, 7, 0. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, further recommendation under Article 3?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 3, Motion B, as printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book on pages 36 through 39, in the total amount of $21,323,032, with $20,276,145 sourced from water and sewer user fees, and $1,046,887 sourced from golf user fees, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded. Was that, I didn't hear it. Seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as it appears in the book. Superintendent Wong, I know you have an answer to the question, right? That was asked? Yeah. Can you quickly give it? I know it's out of order. Bite my head off, but let's be fair and let the information get out.
It's $18,070 per pupil for last year.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. There you have your answer. Mr. Townsend, on motion B, you have already given presentation.
I have.
And you're ready to answer any questions if necessary.
We are.
Okay, motion B, as it is printed in your Finance Committee recommendation books, the two enterprise funds. Debate on the matter, or matters. None. We'll vote motion B. Motion B is a majority vote. Please vote now. It's a majority. Yep. Is voting closed? It's really slow tonight. Slowest I've seen it. Here we go. Voting is closed. The tally is 109 yes, 2 no, 0 abstained. As you had advanced Article 13, we'll now go to Article 13, which follows a capital article. And it looks like it starts on page 86. Just a note, the motion requirement in the book says 2/3 vote. This actually is a Natick bylaw change, so it is a majority vote, not a zoning bylaw change. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 13 as printed in the Finance Committee recommendation book on pages 86 through 88, and I so move.
Second.
I'm sorry, you said 87 through 91?
I said 86 through 88. It begins on the motion.
Oh, okay, I just saw the chart under the...
Begins on page 86, and then
okay,
the
so it's
two
just
chart.
87 and 88. All
86,
right.
87, 88, yep.
Gotcha. As printed in the Finance Committee book, to speak to the matter, Mr. Levinsky.
Thank
Steve, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Steve Levinsky, Chair of the Personnel Board. Thank you for the accommodation to move this article up. The Personnel Board is charged each year with presenting a classification and pay plan to town meeting. The proposed revised pay plan will be up on the screen soon. The plan covers the town's general government, non-union employees, which is roughly 70 employees. It creates the structure for compensation for town employees. The actual funding for town departments and employees' salaries are handled in other warrant articles. Establishing individual salaries is a responsibility of the town administrator. This warrant article does not seek any funding, and there are no additions to headcount, and that's really small print. So we're happy to answer a lot of questions if it's not legible up there. On the full-time pay plan and part-time pay plan, the Human Resources Director of the town conducted an external salary survey collecting data from 43 towns across the Commonwealth, focusing on 33 benchmark position titles, which covered titles in each of our 6 grades. It was a Herculean effort, and I want to thank the Human Resources Director and her team for collecting and compiling the information. The Personnel Board then analyzed that information in 3 different ways. We looked at our plan compared to the plans of those other 24 towns that we put out as comparables. We also looked at it as our plan compared to the actual incumbents in those other 3 towns to see how the comparability was, and the actual salary of each of the 33 incumbents in Natick to the average of the data we collected. The Personnel Board's conclusions are that the classification pay plan is competitive in our marketplace, which allows the administration to recruit and pay high caliber employees. And Natick is compensating employees with few exceptions competitively. And how we define that is within 10% plus or minus of that market average per position in each grade. In addition, the Personnel Board completed the compression analysis, and what that means is we looked at how employees are arrayed on the salary range. And what our conclusions were is that the administration is executing the pay plan as intended. That is, we have employees very near minimum arrayed all the way up to near the maximum with no, we call it bunching. There's not big groups of employees. There is, though, some compression to the maximum in every grade, meaning that there are about 14% of the town's employees who are bumping up against the maximum, which would prohibit them from receiving increases. So what we're recommending is that we increase each grade by roughly 10%, just the maximum, and this will prevent or really allow those employees to receive further compensation. In addition, because the pay plan has been around now for about 12 years, and by increasing the maximum, it's allowing us to create a range within a range, so to give employees additional opportunities. We're not recommending any changes to the minimums or the guidance points. In addition to that, since we saw you last, we reviewed 24 job descriptions and titles. Because of the time and interest, they are in the book, but we're happy, instead of going over each of those, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Alderson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jeff Alderson, Precinct 9. A question regarding the pay table. Do we need to file or make a motion for an amendment to correct a typo in the pay table as printed and as displayed? Grade 6 maximum is missing a 0. I would not want to graduate to the maximum if I were in that position.
On what page does that appear?
As displayed. Top of page 87, top right-hand corner.
Grade 6 maximum is 200,000.
Right.
Am I missing it?
As printed, it's missing a 0. It's 20,000. The comma is also in the wrong spot.
What, I'm sorry, somebody help me with this?
It says 200, comma, 2 zeros, 0.00. So there's a 0 missing in the end part of the number there.
Is it intended to be 200,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So without any objection, we'll move the decimal point over 10 so that it's 200,000. Seeing no objection, we'll do that. Do just that right now. You got that, Diane? Okay, good. Mr. Scott.
Thank you. And just want to bring to your attention that we have a maximum of a grade 5 and a grade 6 that exceeds the salary of a United States Senator or a member of Congress. Their salary is $174,000, and we have our little town paying $200,000 on a maximum. I think those numbers should not exceed members of our creative Washington establishment. Can we adjust
Do you
that?
want to continue in debate?
Yes, I'd like to see if we can redo those numbers so that we can.
Well, all due respect, I didn't hear a question. So that was debate in my opinion. And if you want to ask a question, ask a question.
How can we reduce
You made a
that?
statement. This is a classic example of trying to make a statement with a question. Ask your question, then make your statement. So please ask your question.
Is there a way we can reduce grade 5 and grade 6 to not exceed $174,000?
Mr. Levinsky.
Town meeting can do whatever town meeting wants. Let me just be clear about that. It's our recommendation that we try to pay competitively, not excessively, but competitively in the marketplace. So as we looked at those 24 towns with a population of 25% higher and lower, this is competitive ranges out there.
Thank you.
Further debate, Mr. Gath.
Per a prior speaker's comments, Bill Gath, Precinct 6. Per a prior speaker's comments, I would just like to say that we pay our employees what they're worth. We don't overpay them. Thank you.
Further debate on the motion before you, as you see it on page 87 and 88. Seeing none, this is a majority vote. Please vote now.
I suppose I should vote for this.
Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 96 yes, 7 no, 1 abstain. Jumping back to Article 4 on page 42 is the next order of business. It was not. Yeah. I think it went 1, 2, 6. Yeah, okay. Right. Because this was different, I didn't put it in. Mr. Jacobs, Finance Committee recommendation.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 4 as printed on page 42 in the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Mr. Townsend, to speak to the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Townsend, Deputy Town Administrator and Director of Finance. Article 4, rescind authorized unissued debt. We would request that the 2 projects listed in the motion, place groundwater wells in the amount of $800,000, be rescinded. These are 2 particular projects which the staff of the Water and Sewer Department have indicated they're no longer necessary, and we would ask that they be rescinded. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
To debate the matter. Seeing none, we'll vote Article 4. Requires a majority vote as printed. Please vote at this time. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 98 yes, 0 no. It is unanimous. Next order of business is Article 5. Article 5 is unpaid bills. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 5 as printed on page 44 of the Finance Committee recommendation book in the amount of $5,170 from free cash, and I so move.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. The motion as it appears on page 44. This does require a 4/5 vote. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is the article to pay unpaid bills. We are required by law to pay our bills within the year in which their services are rendered. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, in certain bills for the provision of a pre-employment physicals and drug testing for new employees were not paid within the allocated period of time. So therefore, we would request an appropriation free cash of $5,170 to resolve these particular bills. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Debate on the matters on this question? Seeing none, we'll vote on this at this time. Please vote at this time. I'm sorry. 6 and 7 were, yes. Yeah. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote. Is 95 yes, 0 no. It is unanimous. Next order of business is Article 8. This evening there was a handout for Article 8. I want to mention that before you get too deep into this. There is a revised motion for 8. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation under Article 8?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 8, Motion A, in the amount of $108,514 from FY 2024 free cash, as printed on page 50 of the Finance Committee recommendation book, and I so move.
Okay, knowing that there's a revised motion from the administration, why don't, I know your recommendation is only on what is printed in the book, but we have this motion which added another bargaining unit. Would you wish to move that at this time?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to, that's what we recommended. I will move, though, as, Okay.
Well, your recommendation applies to the 108 change.
Right.
But now we have this printed motion, which really is going to need to raise 126, 184.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that what you're moving?
And I so move.
Yeah,
126, 184, yes.
And it's seconded by Mr.
Second.
Gilmore. Thank you. Motion A, as it is printed on the handout, which is entitled Supplement Information 2024 Spring Annual Town Meeting, submitted by the Town Administration. It's dated April 22nd, 2024, and that is now for your consideration. Do you want to explain this, what is going on with these changes and the motion?
Certainly, just briefly, Mr. Moderator, if that's okay with you. Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator. Just briefly, the town currently pending vote tonight has 5 collective bargaining agreements on the town side of our 10 collective bargaining units expiring this fiscal year. The other 5 would be expiring next fiscal year. 3 of those are captured in this motion. The original motion in the Finance Committee book only had 2 of the units, which were or are the 2 DPW supervisors and DPW laborers. We were able to settle with the clerical union after the budget book was created, but before tonight, and we'd like to add that, which is the printed motion that was out front and in front of you right here. The total cost is noted, $126,000 and change, to settle these 3 collective bargaining agreements with these 3 units. We are still actively working with the other 2. Those other 2 are libraries and police dispatch. They are ongoing. They have been very collaborative, but we are just not quite there yet for this town meeting. Thank you.
Very good. On motion A, Ms. Collins.
Thank you. Kathy Collins, Precinct 9. Through you, Mr. Moderator. Could I ask the interim school superintendent if she was aware of the Public Works Department Laborers Union being negotiated, as I sit on that negotiating team and was not?
Was the superintendent on these negotiating teams?
The Laborers Union covers the custodians in the schools.
No.
And so the school committee has its place in that bargaining.
This is local 1116.
Correct. This is the DPW laborers.
Yeah.
That's the custodians and facilities, which is next fiscal year.
Is that separate from the
Okay, thank you very
It's a
much.
separate group.
The bargaining union
I was
in the
having a
schools?
brain hiccup. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Okay, very good. Further debate under motion A, as printed on the supplemental information handout. We'll vote this at this time. Requires a majority vote. I'm sorry? Yes, it's a majority vote. Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is 97 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain. That passes by majority vote. Mr. Jacobs, you want to jump right into the handout motion?
Sure.
Since it's common
yes.
knowledge?
Yep, great.
Thank you.
So I move that we take favorable action on the subject matter of Article 8, Motion B, as printed in the handout in the amount of $30,745, sourced from water and sewer fund user fees.
Second.
That's moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. Mr. Townsend?
If it's okay, Mr. Moderator, I'll take this one as well.
I wasn't looking up, I'm sorry.
That's
Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Erickson, Town Administrator. Just briefly, a portion of the units that are part of these settled agreements work in the Water and Sewer Division, which is largely funded through the enterprise funds. So this is to appropriate from those enterprise funds to cover the collective bargaining.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Debate on the matter? Everybody see what the motion is? Very good. We'll vote on this at this time. When you're ready. We are ready to vote. I'm sorry. We'll see. Voting is closed. The tally of the vote is, looks like 93 yes, 1 no, 2 abstain. Next order of business is Article 10. Article 10 is a question with regards to stabilization funds and OPEB. Love that, OPEB. Mr. Jacobs, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends favorable action on the subject matter of Article 10 as printed on page 55 of the Finance Committee recommendation book in the amount of $500,000 from FY 2024 certified free cash, and I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jacobs, seconded by Mr. Gillenwater. As found in the Finance Committee recommendation book. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Townsend, Deputy Town Administrator and Director of Finance. We are asking the town meeting to appropriate the sum of $500,000 into, first of all, $250,000 into the Capital Stabilization Fund in order to support our ongoing capital projects, and then $250,000 as to put into the OPEB trust fund. As you recall, you passed certain legislation with regards to the OPEB trust fund last town meeting, so we want to continue on our support of our OPEB liabilities for another $250,000. And this all, of course, is from free cash. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Debate on the matter before you. Motion as it appears, looks like it's top of page 55. Seeing none, we will vote that at this time. Please vote now. Voting is closed. Tally of the vote is 93 yes, 1 no, 0 abstain. That passes by majority vote. There's going to be a lengthy presentation under Article 12, which is our next article. For what purpose do you seek the floor, Ms. Merkel? Member Merkel? Merkowitz, I'm sorry.
Mr. Moderator, I move to adjourn.
Seconded by Mr. Jennett. Moved by Ms. Merkowitz.
Start presenting.
All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? If you oppose it, you can stay. We will be back next Tuesday night. If you didn't check in at the